I'm going to cover today is, firstly, I'm going to show you scientific evidence, scientific research and findings that show that this person, this neuroscientist, Benjamin Libet, he actually did some experiments to show that we may not have free will, what is called free will. In the sense, free will here is referring to you're free to make a decision straight away what to do, right? And this experiment shows that when we try to make a conscious decision, long before that decision is made, the brain has a lot of activity going on, urging us with a lot of thoughts. So in other words, this experiment shows that when you think you are making a decision that moment, several seconds before that, the brain has already corrupted a lot of thinking, but you are not aware of it. These are unconscious. So these are unconscious, and in fact the Buddha described them as Anusayānaṁ, using a Pali term Anusayānaṁ, and one of the sutras, Majjhima Nikāya 18, I will explain that, the Buddha's teaching on that. Buddha called it Anusayānaṁ. And my teacher, Venerable Dr Punnaji, because he has a doctorate degree in psychology, especially on the research done by Sigmund Freud, he came to the conclusion that the word Anusayānaṁ is best translated as unconscious repressions. That means repressed memory. Now, repression is not the same as suppression. Suppression is when you have a thought, you want to press it down, you want to get rid of it, remove it. That is suppression. Repression is these thoughts, you just put it away and ignore it, leave it aside. You know, you don't even think about it. So it's really unconscious. You don't even think about it. You're not forcing it to anything. So that's why it's called repression, not the same as suppression. And these repressed memories arise before we make a decision, affecting our thinking in such a way that if we are not mindful, if we don't think mindfully according to what Buddha taught as satipatthana, if we don't think mindfully, these repressed memories arising can influence our thinking, producing effects of lobha, dosa, and moha. That's why the Buddha was talking about these three evil roots, lobha, dosa, moha. And lobha, basically, my teacher basically mentioned that lobha is basically the lust, the greed, and the preference, and the liking of something pleasant. Dosa is the opposite. It's the anger, the hatred, the aversion, right, to push away something that is unpleasant. And while doing that, we also have the delusion that we are the delusion of a self-centered existence. I exist. I am here. These thoughts are me. That is a delusion. We identify thoughts as us. These thoughts arising, that's me. But actually, that is actually part of what the Buddha called moha, delusions. If we are not conscious about it, if we don't practice mindfulness. And then the Buddha taught that by practicing mindfulness, and the full teaching is called satipatthana, by practicing mindfulness, it helps us to relax the body, calm the mind, and then help us to cultivate what is called wise attention, yoniso manasikara. That means we are consciously aware and we apply wisdom in making a decision. So the way to solve this problem of repressed memory disturbing our thoughts, creating lobha, dosa, moha, is the practice of satipatthana. So without further ado, let's get on with it. Right? I have this technique that I use for the prison inmates, and it has been very successful. I teach them how to, when they are excited, when they are disturbed, or when they are angry, or whatever, lobha, dosa arising, they learn to pause, do not react, relax, and then think, introspect. This is really putting satipatthana into daily practice. Okay? So, first I will show you this experiment by Benjamin Libet. He passed away in 2007, but many of these experiments were done in the 1980s, and subsequently many of his students and associates continue to carry on with his research, and there are further findings I will explain later. So let's just watch what Benjamin Libet experiment is about.
Does the brain start first, or do you start the brain? Because the traditional way of looking at voluntary action or free will is that you want to do something and you tell the brain to get going.
The results of his work have been debated for years. Benjamin Libet may now have retired from the fray, but others are continuing his work.
We all have this very strong belief that we have conscious free will. And it's a central part of our idea of ourselves as individuals that we can want to do something, we can have an intention to do something, and then we can do it. We can make our intention drive our actions. And Benjamin Libet's work was one of the few experiments which made a truly innovative and courageous attempt to address that question.
I can't feel it being cold. Patrick Haggard's team are going to measure my brain activity in the run-up to a conscious decision, with electrodes placed on my scalp.
Okay, Susan, hello. You're all wired up and ready to go.
Absolutely.
We're going to record from your left motor cortex, your right motor cortex, and from the midline. I want you to watch the clock hand, which is rotating in this small clock in the center of the screen. And then at any time that you choose, when you intend and will to, I want you to press either this key or this key.
As
the urge takes you.
Fine, okay.
And then the computer will prompt you to type in the position of the clock hand at which you first felt the conscious will to press the button.
Good.
Any questions?
No.
Off we go.
It's very funny waiting for the urge, isn't it? So watching the clock, I record the exact time that I make the decision to act, while the electrodes on my head monitor the activity in my brain leading up to this decision.
So basically there's a rotating clock she's watching, and then she will then make a decision, okay, I want to press the button. That moment when she decided to press the button, she see where the clock is so that she key in. That very moment she pressed the button. So any moment, make a decision, okay, I want to press the button, and then they record the time, the moment that the button is pressed. At the same time, the brain is being monitored, and this is repeated many, many times, and activity in the brain has been monitored using EEG, and they monitor the part of the brain associated with decision making on taking action. That means there's a part of the brain where we decide to do something with the body, and that is where they're measuring the activity. Now let's take a look at the findings from there.
As I do this over and over again, a clear pattern starts to emerge.
So here are our results, which contain the same basic effect as Libet originally found. The average time of the intention to move was where this arrow is here, and you can see that the motor areas of the brain have begun to build up electrical activity in preparation for this willed action 2,000 milliseconds at least before the action actually occurs.
Just as in Libet's original work, this experiment seems to show that my brain begins to prepare for movement long before I felt like I had consciously decided to move. So did I have any real choice about when I moved? Could the feeling of having made a decision just be an illusion?
So this looks like a real problem for our idea of conscious free will, because our assumption that we work with every day, I think, is that we decide what we want to do, and then, or I should say, I decide what I want to do, and then I am able to get my brain to drive my body to make it happen.
Could the feeling of having made the decision is just an illusion. And what the research showed is, this is the moment where she decided, she made the decision to press. And of course, by the time she pressed the button, it is a fraction of a second later, okay? Maybe a quarter of a second later. But what the brain scan found out was, long before the decision was made, there was a lot of mental activity rising, building up, before she made a conscious decision. But she's not aware of it. She's not conscious of it. This brain activity is building up without her awareness. That means it's unconscious. And it can be, in her case, it was 2 to 3 seconds. In other words, 2 to 3 seconds before she decided, I want to press the button, there's already a lot of brain activity going on. Unconscious activity going on. So it was proven there. In fact, in subsequent research by many other researchers, for some people, actually this lady is a very highly educated lady. She's in fact a professor in neuroscience. So other research using average people, sometimes they found that it can be as long as 5 to 7 seconds before a conscious decision was made. The brain had already gone through a lot of unconscious activity. That means a lot of unconscious thoughts are arising and disturbing the brain to influence the brain to make a conscious decision. That's why they say there is no free will. That's what they call this. No free will, okay? So these are unconscious mental activities arising long before a conscious decision was made. And in some people, the average person, it could be as long as 5 to 7 seconds. In the case of highly educated people, it's 2 to 3 seconds. So, and they call this process the readiness potential.
Did you know that best argument against free will is Libet experiment, conducted by Benjamin Libet in the 1980s? In this experiment, participants were asked to perform a simple voluntary action, such as pressing a button, while their brain activity was monitored using an electroencephalogram or EEG. They were also asked to note the exact moment they felt the conscious intention to act. Libet discovered that there was a consistent readiness potential, a specific pattern of brain activity that occurred several hundred milliseconds before participants reported feeling the conscious decision to act. This suggested that the brain had already initiated the action before the person became aware of their decision. Does this mean the decision was already made? The Libet experiment has inspired further research into the neuroscience of decision-making, such as studies by John Dylan Haynes using fMRI, which also found that brain activity can predict decisions seconds before conscious awareness.
So basically, unconscious thoughts arise several seconds before we seem to make a conscious decision.
The implications of Libet's findings are far-reaching. That our conscious mind, our free will, is merely an after-effect. The actions and decisions we take every day, which feel like instant conscious choices, are actually the result of slowly emerging subconscious processes in the brain. If everything really starts in the subconscious, do we have any freedom? Or are we sophisticated machines, our responses determined by the mechanics of our brains?
Now the question is, are conscious decisions truly made freely? Right? So this experiment shows that there is a lot of disturbances in the brain going on long before you decide to do something. And this experiment is very crucial because it does prove something that the Buddha was talking about. Just very quickly summarizing what was discovered there is that our brain, only a small part of it is conscious. A lot of thoughts going on is unconscious. We're not aware of it, right? And some of it may disturb us and then we become aware. but there's a lot of things going on, unconscious and subconscious. And these are various types of perceptions and so on. Now, perception is not the same as perceiving. Perceiving is when light enters the eye, you see something, that's perceiving, without thinking about what you see. That's perceiving. But perception is the moment you think about what you see, the mind is already corrupted with a lot of interpretations. So there's already a lot of interpretations going on here. Interpretations, and these are unconscious thoughts arising, and Bhante Punnaji explained and called them repressed memories. So all these are arising, disturbing us, and that's why the root of the disturbance is lobha, moha, and dosa. Lobha, dosa, and moha, the three evil roots, and that disturb our conscious mind. And then leads us to have emotional reaction. Now, this disturbance is called stressor. Stressor is the generic name referring to conditions that arise and disturb us physically and mentally, both affecting the body because it becomes stress. It is manifested as stress. That means the body releases hormones. And hormones flood the body, making the body tense, and our muscles are already tight, and then we feel uncomfortable. So there's a lot of disturbances going on in the body, at the same time disturbing the mind. Okay. And generally, there are three categories of stressors. The first type is arousing emotions. We call them emotional trauma. Anything that arouses emotions, and it can be any kind of emotions, almost anything in the world arouses our emotions. There is nothing, for a normal human person, easily emotions are aroused the moment we see, hear, smell, taste, or touch anything. Only when you practice satipatthana, you practice mindfulness, you become aware that all this is going on, then you are able to be conscious of what's going on. But otherwise, for almost every one of us, this emotional trauma is arising, producing various kinds of emotions arising. At the same time, things are happening that are not according to our wishes. They create threats and conflicts, encountering all kinds of problems and troubles, things that are not according to our expectations. Okay? And therefore, they cause all kinds of obstructions. And of course, uncertainty, anicca. We don't know what's going to happen next. So when something happens and makes us feel very stressed, we don't know when this stress is going to stop. We don't know. We feel tense, we get excited. We don't know when this excitement will stop. We don't know. So there's uncertainty going on. So these are the three major categories of stressors going on that is affecting us, okay? Arousing emotions, creating problems in our life, and then a lot of uncertainty, anicca. And all these lead us to react immediately without thinking, because we are unmindful. So when we are not properly practicing mindfulness, we have a tendency to react whenever we experience any form of stressors that produce stress reactions in the body. Now I'll give you a flow chart to show what is going on. When things are happening around us, we are experiencing the environment, but the mind likes to interpret. We begin to interpret what's going on. And because of our interpretation, it arouses emotions, it creates problems, and it is uncertainty. These are the stressors. They arise and disturb us. And then they make the body uncomfortable because of stress hormones. Now the body is all tensed up because of stress hormone. We may not be even aware of it, but it is happening to us. And also the mind is disturbed. The body is affected, so this is called stress. And the mind is disturbed, this is called distress. So the word distress means mental disturbances. The mind is disturbed. So both body and mind being disturbed. And when this is disturbed, we have a tendency to react without thinking. So therefore, all this is causing us to react without thinking, reacting unmindfully and instantly. Like someone says something unpleasant to us, the next minute we very easily react and shout back or deny or get angry. So that is unmindfulness in action. So all this is causing us to react. And because we react, the root of this reaction is loba dosa moha, as the Buddha pointed out. And what does it cause? It causes an emotional chain reaction, leading to all kinds of emotions arising, disturbing the mind even further, and maybe even going beyond that, feeding emotions with mental proliferation. The mind going crazy with all kinds of crazy thoughts. This is for people who don't practice mindfulness, and they allow their emotions to take control of them. So that is what normally happens. And because of this reaction. So we have to learn to practice mindfulness so that we don't react so easily. And now I will share with you a very important sutra that the Buddha spoke about, Majjhima Nikāya number 18, Madhupiṇḍikasutta, the Honey Ball Sutra. I'm using translations by my teacher, Bhante Punnaji. Okay? So basically, it was the sutra started with describing the Buddha returning to his hometown, Kapilavastu, and was visiting his hometown, and then he decided to take a walk in the park. And there he met, now many commentaries mention that the person he met, Dandapani, the name of that person, Dandapani, is actually his uncle or great uncle, I don't know, but commentaries mention it was his uncle when he was Prince Siddhartha. So, but this person, Dandapani, is a very proud person. He thinks he knows everything. You know, one of those elderly persons who thinks he knows everything. And he came across the Buddha, and in fact, he was somewhat disrespectful. He basically, Dandapani means a person with a walking stick. So he walked around with a walking stick. He was very disrespectful to the Buddha. The first thing he said to the Buddha is, "What do you teach?" You know? Very disrespectful. And of course, the Buddha was very kind to explain roughly what the Buddha normally teaches. So the Buddha basically says, my teaching does not come into conflict with people. I don't argue with people. I don't fight with people. I do not have any attachment to sensual pleasures. Right? And I have no concern for existence or non-existence. Okay? So basically, we think we exist, and that is a delusion. And no emotional reaction to sensations, whatever I experience, I don't react to it. So the Buddha explained all these things to Dandapani. But Dandapani, being a very disrespectful person who thinks he knows everything, just turned around and made a lot of judgments, made a lot of comments, and walked away. So he just shook his head, wagged his tongue. Wagged his tongue means he kept talking a lot of nonsense and just walked away. So very disrespectful, and using his judgment, he made a lot of judgmental comments about the Buddha. So that episode was over. That evening, when the Buddha, after he did his meditation, he went back to the park and started speaking to the monks, his disciples, his assembly of monks, explaining to them what had happened that morning, how he came across Dandapani, and tried to teach them what really happened in the case of Dandapani. So he mentioned, and this is the Pali, but translated by my teacher, Bhante Punnaji. Basically, Bhante Punnaji translated it very precisely to say, in whatever way a person recognizes something by classifying or labeling it, it is in this way that past experiences begin to affect future behavior unconsciously. It means the moment we see, hear, smell, taste, or touch something, that is the reality of our experience. But the mind begins to interpret. The mind begins to give meaning. The mind begins to make judgment. The mind begins to put labels to it. Oh, this is a good person. Oh, that is a bad person. Right? So we're giving label to people and making judgment. He's good or he's bad. So all this affects our thinking. So in whatever way we classify or label something, our past experiences, which is buried deep inside our memory, repressed memory, begin to arise and disturb us, affecting our behavior, future behavior, unconsciously. So this is what the Buddha explained in the Pali terms that was translated by Bhante Punnaji. Now, I want you to just take note of this word. I'm not explaining it now, but later on in a later slide we will talk about it. The term, very important term, Pancha Sanya Sankha. We'll come back to that in a moment. So, that was part of the Buddha's explanation. So therefore, the explanation is that this is again translation by my teacher Bhante Punnaji. He says, there are unconscious repressions, Anusayānaṁ. So Bhante Punnaji translated Anusayānaṁ as unconscious repressions arising, producing thoughts that shape our beliefs and opinions, influencing our actions and behavior, which may lead to disagreements and conflicts. This is really what's going on. Now, a lot of people translated it differently, so I won't comment on that. But Bhante Punnaji actually has a doctorate degree in psychology. He's also very knowledgeable in Pali, and he studied the psychology and got a doctorate degree. So he's actually translating it with respect to the way our mind works, psychological aspect, okay, which is very important. And then the Buddha described these 7 repressions. First, he called, well, I won't try to read the Pali words, but passion and greed arising, similar to lobha. Then ill will, hatred arising, similar to dosa. So what is pleasant you like, what is unpleasant you don't like. Okay? And then other things. We begin to have opinions and beliefs, and we begin to feel unhappy and confused, perplexity, so vijjikica, okay, vacillation, perplexity arising, and doubts, and then our ego arising, right? And delusion of existence, and finally avijja, okay, unknowing and ignorance. So basically, these are the 7 Anusayānaṁ, 7 types of repressed memory arising, disturbing our thinking. If we are not mindful, whatever decision we make is influenced by these 7 factors. And these lead to lobha, dosa, moha. So lobha can be any form of passion or lust or greed or liking for something that is pleasant. Dosa is ill will, hatred, anger, aversion towards something that is unpleasant. And moha is our ignorance, our not knowing, and delusion of a self-centered existence, thinking this is me, these thoughts are me. We identify ourselves with our thoughts. Okay? But thoughts is nothing but something popping up in our consciousness. But yet we identify ourselves with our thoughts and say, this is me. That's what moha is about, delusion of self-centered existence. So we have to be very careful that these 7 Anusayānaṁ continuously rise up unconsciously, disturbing every decision we make. Okay? So these are all 7. Now I will give you the link that you can download the whole sutra later. Okay? So, listen to Bhante Punnaji explain what is Anusayānaṁ.
Anusaya really means, saya means sleeping. Anusaya means sleeping. That means, what is the meaning of sleeping? This is what Sigmund Freud called repression. That means people begin to forget things, and once it is forgotten, you don't even know that you are having certain things. you're not aware of it. And that kind of sleeping is what is called repression. And so, what is called psychoanalysis of Sigmund Freud was to bring out these hidden, repressed things, bring it out and to become aware of it. What is unconscious is made conscious. So to make the unconscious conscious is what the Buddha, not what the Sigmund Freud did, and that is what the Buddha did also, ultimately, to make the unconscious conscious. That unconsciousness is what is called avidya. And so, our mind is normally in an unconscious state. Most of the time, although we think we are conscious, most of the time we are acting unconsciously. This is the point. And this is why Sigmund Freud used the analogy of the iceberg. When the iceberg is kept in the water, it's like a piece of ice you put in the water, it begins to float. What is out of the water is only a small piece, the rest is inside the water. So in the same way, our mind, when we say we are conscious, we are only a small piece is conscious. The rest is all happening unconsciously.
So only a small part of the mind is conscious. Anyway, completing the sutra here is that the Buddha spoke, this is how these 7 unconscious mental processes arise, bringing about conflicts of all kinds. And then the Buddha stopped there. He didn't continue to explain much further, and he left and returned to his chamber. But of course, the monks, having heard that, were a little bit puzzled, a little bit unclear. They needed more explanations. So what the monks did is that in the sutra, it was mentioned further, they went to see Venerable Mahakachana, who was an enlightened monk at that time, enlightened teacher, one of Buddha's assistants, and asked for further elaborations. Now, I won't go further into the sutra. It suffices to say that he reminded us of the 7 Anusayānaṁ. So if you are interested, you can go to this link. I'll give you all this link at the end of today's sharing, and you can use this link to download the full sutra translation by Venerable Bodhi, Bhante Bodhi, Bikkhu Bodhi. Okay, so that one you can download later. Moving on, we talk about this Anusayānaṁ. Now, I mentioned this term, Papanca Sanya Sangha. This is the term the Buddha used to describe how we begin to give labels to something, how we put them into categories. We categorize. Somebody who is doing something nice, we go, oh, this is a good person. Somebody who do something unpleasant, then we say, this is a bad person. We put them into category of good or bad, kind or unkind. So we categorize people and things. So this is really the process called Papanca Sanya Sangha. Now listen to Bhante Punnaji explain the meaning of that term.
Papanca is really identification. Identification.
Is it the same as categorization then?
That is right. It is by categorizing that you identify.
Yeah.
That is the meaning of Papanca Sanya Sangha. Sanka is category. Papancha Sanya Sanka. It is by putting it into a category that you begin to identify.
So, Papancha Sanya Sanka, and that is from this phrase, Pali phrase in the Majjhima Nikāya 18, and Bhante Punnaji basically translated as, in whatever way a person recognizes something, by classifying it, labeling it, or categorizing it, it is in this way that past experiences begin to affect future behavior unconsciously. It means the moment we label something, this is a good person, this is a bad person, he's a kind person, he's a angry person. When we begin to put labels, then there's a lot of things coming up unconsciously, affecting the way we think about that person. Right? We have to be aware of that. And being aware of that is what Satipatthana is all about, the practice of mindfulness. So, basically I'm pointing out here that associating underlying meaning based on categorization, and this leads to our imagination arising, or our memory of past experiences arising, or our expectation of the present moment is arising, and this process of arising pollutes our thinking, and that pollution is called mental proliferation. It distorts our thinking or pollutes our thinking, right? And it also affects our perception. Right? So this is where perception comes in. It's not the same as perceiving. When you see an object, that is called perceiving. But the moment you think about what that object is and you begin to give it a classification, this is a cup, this is a bottle, your mind begins to have unconscious thoughts about what is a cup, what is a bottle, begin to rise up. And it begins to turn that little observation into something much bigger. You know, like they say in Cantonese, ka yin ka chowa. Add salt, add sugar, add vinegar. Right? So the moment we label something, the mind begins to have all this ka yin ka chowa. Right? So we have to be careful, avoid labeling. Okay? So what is mental proliferation? And there are actually quite a number of them. Okay, I'll just go back. This mental proliferation is based on cognitive psychology research by a few very famous psychologists, Aaron Beck, Albert Ellis, and several other people who then explain this is called cognitive distortions. Right? That means the mind begins to be polluted in the way we think about something. And there are many of them. I won't go through them, but just roughly, you can download this list. I'll give you the link at the end of the sharing today. You can download this list, 21 of them, which basically describe how our mind confuse the reality. That means we see something, by labeling it, the mind begins to think about it in so many other strange and unusual ways. I'll just go to the last one, for example, past orientation. Whenever we see something, our memory arises, letting past experiences dictate all decisions, expecting the past determines the future, expecting that whatever happened before with this person is going to happen again. You know, that kind of thing. So there are many of these. So 21, you can download the list later. I'll give you the link at the end of the sharing. This is what Papancha Sanya Sanka will do. Categorized identification lead to mental proliferation. So we have to be very careful what we do with the way we think about something, the way we classify it, the way we give labels to it. Right? And in a nutshell, basically, this is what's going on. All these unconscious repressed memory, right? Unconscious repressions arising, disturbing us. Repressions is something we put away. That's why Bhante calls it sleeping. We put it away, we don't think about it, but it is happening. It is affecting us. From Benjamin Libet experiment, it shows that the mind has a lot of these unconscious thoughts going on before we make a conscious decision. So it is disturbing us, right? And the root of the disturbance is Loba Dosa Moha. And all this is Anusayānaṁ arising to disturb our thinking. A very little part of the mind is conscious, above the surface. The rest is below the surface. Okay? So now we'll quickly go through this process again. What is going on? When we experience something around the environment, we begin to interpret what's going on, right? How we perceive our circumstances, the way we interpret it, and it creates stressors, causing the body to be uncomfortable and the mind to be disturbed. And because of this interpretation and labeling and classifying, categorizing, and then we begin to react unmindfully, right? And when we react unmindfully, the root of the reaction is lobha, dosa, moha, leading to all kinds of emotional chain reaction, and that is a lot of suffering. That's why we suffer. Right? We suffer because of the way we interpret, the way we react. That leads to a lot of suffering. Now, what are thoughts? What's going on? Basically, these unconscious repressed memories arise and manifest as thoughts at any time without our choosing, without our knowledge, without our control. We can't control them, they just pop up. Imagine sometimes when you try to sleep at night, you lay down there, you are very relaxed, and then suddenly some nasty thoughts pop up. You remember what happened yesterday. You are worried about what's going to happen tomorrow. You know, these thoughts pop up while you're trying to sleep, disturbing you, you can't sleep. Right? This is really what's going on. Do you have control over them? No. Can you choose them? No. But you can choose how to respond to them. You can't choose what arises, but you can choose how you respond to it. And one of the practice that helps us choose how we can respond to it is the practice of mindfulness. So, when these things arise, we have no control, no choosing, is anicca. We can't control them. And they lead to all kinds of emotional reactions in our mind, and also stress in the body, suffering. If we were to think about these things, if we allow these thoughts to control us, that's dukkha. We have no control and it is affecting us, hurting us. And thoughts are nothing but visitors. Thoughts are not us. I am not what I think. I think it's just thoughts popping up. That's not me. But we tend to associate, I'm thinking this is me, I like this. You see, every time we respond to an experience, the first word is I like this. I like this morning's breakfast. I don't like this morning's breakfast. I like the tom sui because I'm diabetic and it is not sweet. But if I'm a young person, I don't like the tom sui because there's no sugar in it. You know? What's the first word? I, me, and mine. Anatta. Really, these thoughts are not us. They are impersonal. They just arise. You have no control over them. Can you control your thoughts? Can you control every thought? You can control how you respond to the thoughts, yes. But when thoughts pop up, you can control. You lay down at night, try to sleep, and these thoughts keep popping up. If you try to say, go away, that's even worse. They fight back. When you try to fight with these thoughts, the thoughts will fight you back. And then it will stay in your mind for the whole night, you can't sleep. You know? So this is really what's going on. We have no control over that. And it's not us. It's anatta. So anicca, dukkha, anatta. Right? While we do not have this thing called free thought, that means our thoughts are not purely free. They are disturbed by anusayānaṁ. No control over when and how these unconscious thoughts arise. But we do have the freedom to choose our response. How we respond to them. That we can choose. Okay? So, practice mindfulness. Now, what is mindfulness? I'll just quickly describe very briefly from a layman's perspective. This is a layman's description of mindfulness. So when we perceive something going on in our environment, the thing about practicing mindfulness is to be aware of what I showed you earlier on, called the vicious cycle, how it affects us. Right? Be aware that anything we see, hear, smell, taste, and touch affects the body, because if we get excited, hormones are released, it changes the feeling, the experience of the body. The body becomes very tense. Stress hormones are released. It affects how we feel about it, whether it's comfortable or uncomfortable. Something that is pleasurable and unpleasant. Right? Agitation, discomfort, sensations and feelings. And all that disturbs the mind, arousing our emotions, mental disturbances. And if we're not careful, they turn into mental proliferation. Okay? And they affect the way we think. They affect what decisions we make. Our concept and perception of reality is totally distorted by these things arising, affecting us. So these are 4 different ways that if we're not mindful, it affects us. That's why in the practice of Satipatthana, they call these the 4 foundations. Right? The 4 foundations of mindfulness. So mindfulness basically means we must be aware when these things arise, it disturbs us, and this vicious cycle is going on. And the solution from the layman's simple practice, learn to relax. When we get excited, learn to relax. Don't react. Right? Do not react unmindfully. And refrain from making judgment. Refrain from categorizing them, labeling them, and making judgment about them. Focus on relaxation. Basically, do not react unmindfully, because when you do, it leads to judgment. Judgment leads to mental proliferation. And the important thing is to focus on relaxation. And I have this simple technique that I'm going to share with you. I use that a lot in the prison to teach the prisoners how they can overcome the stress they are experiencing. You know, the kind of stress they experience every day is very severe. Imagine yourself living in a place where you are locked inside your compound, you don't even have a neighbor to talk to. The only people you can talk to are the people inside the house. And if that house is full of people, some of them don't like you, some of them you don't get along with, but you have to live with them. That's what happens inside the prison. Very stressful. So I teach them, pause, relax, and think. This is rooted in the practice of mindfulness. So what is the practice of mindfulness? I'll use a translation by Dr. John Kabat-Zinn, who's very famous in teaching mindfulness-based stress reduction. He says, mindfulness means our ability to carry out moment-to-moment non-judgmental awareness cultivated by paying attention on purpose in the present moment. That is his very simple layman's explanation of the meaning of mindfulness. That means every moment that is going on, right, we do not judge what's going on, non-judgmental. Be aware, and this awareness is pay attention, observe what's going on, purposefully, in the present moment. And there are 4 areas to observe, as I pointed out earlier. The body, the feeling, the emotions, and your thinking. Okay? Those are the 4 foundations of mindfulness. And Bhante Punnaji described this mindfulness meditation. Meditation is bhavana. It says that it is by being conscious. That means the practice of bhavana, mindfulness meditation. It is by being conscious all the time that we can control our emotions. The constant practice of being conscious is what the Buddha called development or bhavana, development of the mind, development of mindfulness, bhavana. Okay? So the practice of mindfulness meditation, that's bhavana. That means we remain conscious. Don't allow the unconscious thoughts keep disturbing us. Be aware there is this disturbance going on. And a lot of people translated Satipatthana as mindfulness, and it's very hard to figure out what is mindfulness. Some people say mindfulness, then your mind gets filled with many things. But the real meaning of mindfulness, Satipatthana, comes from the 3 root words. Sati, Upa, Tana. Sati means attention. Upa is inside, within. Tana is to place or to focus. Okay? Therefore, it is to place attention within, and Bhante Punnaji calls it introspection. Right? So, introspection is, now intro means inwards. Spection comes from the word inspection. So, bring your attention inwards and observe what's going on. Introspection. Sati Upa Tana. Okay? That's the real meaning. Because when you use the word mindfulness, what does it mean? Very confusing. Does it mean the mind must be full? Right? Because the word is mindful. Your mind is full. No. The real meaning is bring your attention inwards. Introspection. So let's listen to Bhante Punnaji explain Satipatthana.
Satipatthana. Satipatthana is normally translated as mindfulness. But I think mindfulness is a wrong translation. We are not trying to fill the mind. Mindful means the mind is filled. We are really trying to empty the mind, not to fill the mind. Because the mind is filled with all kinds of nonsense, and as a result, we are suffering. So we are emptying the mind. And the important thing is, to empty the mind, we can't be looking out into the world. We are looking out into the world through the senses, the five senses, the eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue, and the body. When we focus on the things that we see, hear, smell, taste, and touch, we begin to react to those things. If it is pleasant, we desire. If it is unpleasant, we hate. So we are not calming the mind. We are reacting. And therefore, we have to learn to take our attention away from what we see, away from what we hear, away from what we smell, away from what we taste, away from what we touch. So that means turning the mind inwards. And turning the mind inwards is not called mindfulness, it is called introspection. Introspection means turning the mind inwards. So the real Satipatthana is introspection.
So to bring the mind inwards. So there are four areas to focus on, the four focuses of introspection. First, Kayanupassana, focusing on how the body is affected. Observe the physical manifestation or the reactions in the body because of the stress hormone. Your breathing is deepened, your muscles are tense, your heart is beating faster, and all that. So this is the manifestation of bodily activities, Kayanupassana. Next is Vedananupassana, feeling. That means this is basically how all this is feel, how all this feels, whether it is comfortable or uncomfortable. Observe the manifestation of sensations, because all these tensions create sensations and feelings in the body. They are either pleasant or unpleasant, comfortable or uncomfortable. They are tensions or relaxations. So observe that. The third is, they start to affect the mind. And the first area it affects is your emotion. And Bhante Punnaji calls Chittanupassana as affecting the affection. Affection is basically the psychological term to refer to emotions, emotional thoughts. Observe the manifestation of emotional excitement leading to your mood and your temperament, and the arousal of emotional states such as fear, panic, anger, anxiety, distress, and so on. So realize that whatever you experience arouses certain emotions, and then it affects your thinking, your conception. Dhamma. Observe the manifestation of thoughts, the way you think, and concepts, the way you interpret things. Right? The interpretation of circumstances, past, present, and future. Also future, because we get worried about the future. We start to imagine things. And manifestation of this mental proliferation arising. So the mind actually goes in three directions. It goes to memory to look at the past. It goes into imagination to look into the future. But it also goes into expectations to look at the present. Even in the present moment, we have expectations. And that affects us. So memory affects what we think about as the past. Imagination affects what we think about as the future. Expectation affects what we think about as the present. Okay? So we have to be aware that all this affects our thinking. Dhammanupassana. So these are the four foundations of mindfulness, what Bhante Punnaji calls the four focuses of introspection. Four things to look at. But first, we'll just quickly look at the first two. Okay? And let Bhante Punnaji explain these first two. Kayanupassana and Vedananupassana.
And introspection means what are we going to look at when we turn inward? There are only four things to look at. One is to look at the body. Now when we say looking at the body, we begin to think that looking at the body is to use the eyes to look at the body. That is all wrong. That is looking at something outside. That is not looking at inside. To look at the body is not with our eyes, but with our mind. Close your eyes and look at the body. That means you are looking not with your eyes, but with your mind. Focus your attention on the body. You can close your eyes and focus your attention on the body. And when you focus your attention on the body, what you observe is movement in the body, tension in the body. You can become aware of tensions in the body and movements in the body. Now, for example, if you open your eyes and look at something and you see that it is something pleasant, what happens to your body? That is the important thing. And your body will begin to move. The moment you dislike something that you see, again the body will begin to move. It is that movement of the body that is important to observe, but not by looking with your eyes, but with your mind. Look at the body. And then, how the body feels. Is it comfortable or uncomfortable? That means if there is tension in the body, it becomes uncomfortable. If the body is relaxed, it's comfortable. So you can look at the body in terms of movements and tensions and also feel whether it is comfortable or uncomfortable. So that is what is called Kāyanupassana and Vedananupassana. Kāyanupassana is to become aware of the body, and Vedananupassana is become aware whether it is comfortable or uncomfortable.
So the first thing you should be aware of when something happens in front of you, realize that, oh, I'm feeling tense. Oh, my heart is beating faster. This is Kayanupassana. Realize that, oh, my heart is beating faster. This is part of the practice of mindfulness. Realize that you are now affected by what you have just experienced. Makes your heart beat faster, makes your muscles all tensed up, your teeth are grating at each other. And next, you start to feel very uncomfortable, suffering. So this is really dukkha. It's affecting you in a big way, right? So the feelings. So the practice is when you realize that is going on in your body, making your body all tensed up, pause. Do not react. That means realize that you must allow time for your emotional excitement and your anxiety to calm down, and the stress hormones in your body. Allow time for the stress hormones to subside. You must do that, because if you don't, then you are reacting under stressful conditions. And then your reaction will be very unmindful and even lead to more suffering. Now, pausing alone is not enough, because now you want to make this process reduce even further. So you need to consciously relax. Take deep breath. Taking deep breath, relax the body, consciously compose the mind, calm the mind. Only by doing that, your body becomes more relaxed, your mind becomes more calm. And only at that point should you then think about how to respond to what's going on. Very often we don't do that. We react right away. That's why it's called reaction, not response. React right away. So when you pause, allow time for the excitement to subside and the stress hormones to release, finish fully, and then take deep breath to relax further, then you can think, introspect. Think about what you can do. Purposefully focus on helpful and beneficial response to the problem. And this focusing is called introspection. Right? Dhammanupassana. Right? So this is really what the Buddha has taught about mindfulness. And here I give you pause, relax, and think as the simple practice. This practice I have taught very extensively in the prisons to help prison inmates, because they don't know how to stop the stress. This will help you stop the stress. You cannot prevent stress. Stress is something beyond your control. You cannot prevent it, but you can reduce the harmful effects by practicing pause, relax, and then only think when your body is relaxed and your mind is calm. Now, let's see what happens. So, you're experiencing the environment, you're getting all stressed up, your body is uncomfortable, your mind is getting all disturbed, and then it affects you. Now, if you're not careful, it can get out of control. When it gets out of control, it leads to depression and post-traumatic stress disorder. These are very, very unhealthy things happening in your life. Of course, you know what depression is, post-traumatic stress disorder. And then it leads to even psychological disorder. You may go crazy. People go crazy under depression. They lose their mind. And chronic illnesses, it affects the body. Your health declines very rapidly. And health issues arising. You've got to do something about it. And what do you do? Because we don't react. The reason is we react unmindfully. Learn not to react by pause, relax, and then think. When you're able to pause and then relax, and then you are able to practice satipatthana. Right? And when you practice satipatthana, your body becomes relaxed and your mind becomes calm. And what you can do is this vicious cycle of emotion is transformed into virtuous cycle of composure. Now you're feeling more composed. And this is the time when you can think how to respond to the problem that is causing all this effect. And when you do that, by practicing mindfulness with relaxed body and calm mind, you can have good outcomes in your life, good karma, good vipaka. This practice is your karma. This benefit is your vipaka. Vipaka is the outcome, the consequence of your practice. So by practicing this, you gain this healthy body, peaceful mind, caring heart, and joyful spirit. The word I want to be clear. The word spirit, I'm not talking about soul. Joyful spirit means this essence of consciousness inside you, right? That experience that is going on inside you. You're joyful, right? I'm not talking about soul, so don't hang me on that word spirit. This is really this inner consciousness, right? The essence of consciousness. Now you're joyful. You have peace, right? Anicca, you don't have anicca, dukkha, anatta all the time. So you free yourself from anicca, dukkha, anatta because you're no longer affected by lobha, dosa, moha, the three evil roots. So this is really the outcome. And let's listen to Bhante then further explain the last two of Satipatthana, Cittanupassana and Dhammanupassana.
Then another thing that you can observe while looking within is whether your emotions are excited or not. If you are angry, you can observe in your body whether you are angry or whether you are unhappy or whether you are frightened or whether you are worried. Whatever the emotional agitation, by closing your eyes you can still become aware inside. That is called Cittanupassana, becoming aware of the mood. Citta is the mood. Then the next thing is what is called Dhammanupassana. Dhamma is, of course we use the word Dhamma to refer to the teachings of the Buddha. But here Dhamma is not teachings of the Buddha. Dhamma is simply the thought in the mind. What are you thinking? What kind of thought arises in your mind? Are you thinking of what happened yesterday or what is going to happen tomorrow or what is happening now? If you are thinking of something, that is Dhamma. Very important to understand that Dhamma there means the thought in the mind. So those are the four things that you can become aware of when we do introspection. Becoming aware of the body, becoming aware of how the body feels, becoming aware of the emotional state, or becoming aware of the thoughts in the mind. That is Satipatthana, introspection. Now when that has been practicing, you have to practice it not just 5 minutes or 10 minutes or even 1 hour. You have to practice that 24 hours. That is the important thing.
Satipatthana is not a casual practice. It is a continuous 24/7 practice. So basically, Bhante was pointing out to remain conscious. This way you can prevent the unconscious repressions arising to disturb your thinking, right? And remain introspective and fully aware of what's going on, full conscious, 24/7, round the clock. So Satipatthana is not something you just practice for an hour sitting there. It is everything that happens around you. Be aware how it is affecting you and realize that if it affects you negatively, you begin to behave very negatively. So in a nutshell, pause, relax, and when you are adequately relaxed and calm, then think, introspect how to solve the problem, okay, with yoniso manasikara, okay. So with that, I end my presentation. I hope it has been helpful. You can download with these 3 links You can download the documents, take a snapshot, and there are 3 things you can download, including today's sharing. You can download the slides. This third one is the slides for today. This one, the slides for today, right? And the list of mental proliferation. If you have, I'm going to open the floor to questions. So if you have, after downloading and looking at it, you have any questions, feel free to email me or contact me via Facebook, right? So I can respond to you, all right?